Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. It was a calm, mild spring morning in Greenville, a mid-sized Midwestern city, where the seasons stretched slowly and habits died hard. The sun, still low on the horizon, cast a golden light on the gray-roofed houses, the neatly trimmed hedges, and the carefully painted mailboxes. The sky was a soft blue, washed by yesterday's rain, and the birds, freed from the damp, sang enthusiastically. The first cars were leaving the driveways, children's bikes were rolling toward school, and the scent of hot coffee wafted from the kitchens. On Maple Avenue, a quiet street lined with century-old maple trees, a solitary figure attracted little attention. A young girl walked slowly, in a school uniform, navy blue pleated skirt, white shirt buttoned up to the collar, beige cardigan tight at the waist. Her patent leather shoes clicked softly on the still damp pavement. Her name was Alma Bennett, 16 years old, studious and always punctual student of St. Mary's High School, a private Catholic school located 15 minutes away. Alma had always been a brilliant student. Serious, reserved, she didn't make waves. The pastor's daughter Isaiah Bennett, a prominent figure in the local black community, she had grown up in a home where the words, dignity, and grace, carried as much weight as Bible verses. Her father, a man of noble bearing, was known for his sermons filled with love and truth, for his warm, slow voice that soothed even the most angry. Her mother, who passed away too soon, had left in Alma a fragile sweetness, tinged with melancholy. That morning, Alma hummed an old Baptist hymn, learned at the knee of her maternal grandmother, a woman who often said, "When your heart is heavy, sing to lighten it." Alma's voice was low, almost a whisper. Her eyes fixed at times on the trees, then on the clouds, as if she were speaking to them silently. It was her ritual. She loved to walk alone, between heaven and earth, between prayer and dream. Her backpack was crammed with books, literature, science, a worn Bible, a notebook of quotations. But Alma wasn't one to complain. She carried the weight with resilience, as if she'd grown accustomed to heavier burdens than textbooks. Yet, for the past year, she hasn't been quite the same. This subtle but profound change hasn't escaped her classmates' notice. A year earlier, Alma and her mother had been in a tragic accident on a mountain road. Their car, unbalanced on the ice, had rolled down a slope before crashing into a tree. Emergency services had arrived 2 hours later. Her mother had been found dead. But Alma was sitting in the grass, calm, her eyes open, without a single injury. Not a broken bone, not a scratch. Only a profound silence on her face, and a strange gleam in her eyes. The paramedics had whispered to each other, "It seems a miracle." Since that day, some called her the Miracle Girl. Others, more skeptical or malicious, said she had seen something there, that she was no longer quite normal. She seemed calmer than before, more connected to something they couldn't see. She spoke little, but when she did, her words touched people. So that morning, when Alma turned into the residential neighborhood of Hickory Lane, an alleyway lined with flowery pavilions and inhabitants with persistent curiosity, she attracted the attention of a window in spite of herself. Mrs. Gladys Monroe, a septuagenarian widow known for her untimely reports to the police and her obsession with order, watched her pass through her binoculars, as usual. She frowned. Alma walked slowly, her gaze lingering on the tree trunks, on the branches, as if she were reading something there. From a distance, her lips moved. She seemed to be talking to herself. This is enough to arouse Mrs. Monroe's concern. She put down her binoculars, grabbed her speed dial phone, and dialed 911. His trembling voice rose. "Yes. I'm reporting a strange situation. A young girl. African American, in uniform. She's mumbling while looking at the trees. I don't know. She's making me uncomfortable. I think you should send someone." The operator tried to get more information from her, but Gladys was convinced she was dealing with a strange threat. In less than 5 minutes, the ordinary calm of Hickory Lane was broken by the shrill wail of sirens. 3 cars from the Greenville Police Department they sped by, tires screeching, rotating lights projecting red and blue flashes onto the neighborhood's peaceful facades. Doors slammed in a martial concert. Officers appeared in tactical gear, bulletproof vests, belts heavy with weapons and walkie-talkies, hands already on their holsters. The air, suddenly tense, vibrated with electricity. In the last car, 2 large metal cages opened. 2 perfectly trained German shepherds leaped onto the asphalt, Blitz and Shadow, the most respected intervention dogs in the K-9 unit. Their presence alone was usually enough to make even the most hostile suspects obey. But that morning, the suspect was a frail young black girl in a school uniform. Alma Bennett, still a few steps from the intersection, walked quietly, absorbed in her inner song, headphones still in her ears, unaware of the storm that had just formed around her. She looked up at the very moment the police officers formed a circle around her, their arms outstretched, their faces fixed, their movements quick and brutal. There was no polite warning, no preliminary question. Just an order shouted from an authoritarian voice. Stop. Put down your bag. On your knees, hands on your head. It was Officer Travis Nelson, 35, a former Marine turned policeman, known for his heavy-handed tactics and lack of hesitation. He was pointing at Alma, one hand on his gun, the other held out toward her with almost military rigidity. Alma stopped dead in her tracks. First by reflex. Then by instinct. She slowly removed her headphones, her eyes wide. "Excuse me," she breathed. "Get down on the ground. Now." Her voice cracked like a whip. Around her, the dogs were already growling, muscles tensed, lips curled. Blitz took a few steps forward, threatening, ready to pounce. Shadow, more reserved, maintained an alert posture, but his eyes remained fixed on Alma. The girl raised her hands to shoulder height, palms open, a silent tear rolling down her cheek. "I'm just going to school. I didn't do anything." Her words were simple, calm, but trembled with incomprehension. She hadn't moved an inch. She hadn't run. She hadn't screamed. She carried books in her bag and a hymn in her heart. But the police officers didn't see all this. It was then that Officer Martinez, the dog trainer, positioned himself behind Blitz and prepared to give the signal, short, sharp whistle that meant level 1 intimidation. Enough for the dogs to rush forward, barking, stopping inches from the suspect. He raised the whistle to his lips. And then, a strange phenomenon occurred. Blitz, instead of tensing up, froze. His ears perked up suddenly, as if he'd heard a sound no one else could hear. His lips stopped twitching. His growl died in his throat. He tilted his head slightly, as if unsettled, then took a step back. Beside him, Shadow stiffened as well. His muzzle lifted toward the sky, then slowly turned toward Alma. He, too, had stopped growling. An absolute silence fell. The kind of silence that oppresses, that suspends time. And suddenly, the 2 dogs sat down. Without command. Without hesitation. Motionless. Silent. Their gazes were fixed on the girl, not with animosity, but with an unsettling concentration. It was as if they were observing her, as if they recognized her. The agents exchanged incredulous looks. Officer Nelson frowned, his hands still on his gun. "What is?" Then, without warning, Blitz, usually the most nervous, the most aggressive, lay down slowly on the ground, his head lowered between his paws, like a dog submitting, or paying homage. Shadow, a few seconds later, imitated him. Martinez whistled. Twice. Then again. None of the dogs reacted. He raised his voice. "Blitz. Shadow. Reposition yourself." Nothing. Not a movement. The dogs ignored their master. It wasn't fatigue. It wasn't confusion. It was as if something inside Alma was holding them back. As if they felt a force only they could perceive. Officer Carter, the young recruit, stepped back slightly, looking frightened. "It's Not normal. Nelson grunted nervously through his teeth. Are they under his control or what? Alma took a deep breath, as if tapping into an invisible source of calm. Her slow, steady breathing contrasted with the surrounding tumult. With a natural, almost instinctive gesture, she gently knelt on the asphalt. There was no fear in her eyes, but an attitude full of respect and serenity. The crowd around her held its breath. Then, without hurrying, she reached out her hand towards Blitz, the most nervous and reactive dog of the duo. The latter, after a moment of hesitation, took a slow step forward. His massive head fell against Alma's open palm. The contact, soft and surprising, seemed to suspend time. A long silence fell. The kind of silence that makes the soul shiver. Around it, a crowd of passers-by, drawn by the siren, the movement, or simply by curiosity, had gathered. Their faces were tense, torn between fear, incomprehension, and mute fascination. Many took out their phones, silently filming this strange scene. Murmurs circulated, growing louder. A thin voice, that of a woman in her 50s, broke the silence. That's Pastor Bennett's daughter, isn't it? The girl who survived that terrible crash? L'Agent Linda Carter, a 25-year-old recruit, suddenly turned pale. This sentence awakened a painful memory in her. She had heard about that famous accident, the one that had shaken the city. Alma and her mother's car had overturned in a steep ravine on a mountain road a year earlier. Emergency services had found the mother lifeless, lying near the crushed vehicle. But Alma had been miraculously unharmed. Sitting there, beside her mother's body, untouched. Not a wound, not a cut. Just her blood-stained hands, and on her face, a deep, almost supernatural calm. Since that day, the young girl had become an enigma. To some, a miracle. To others, a disturbing mystery. It was whispered that she carried something within her, a strength, a light, or some kind of gift that no scientist could explain. The silence was broken by the firm voice of the Sergeant Mark Holloway, a man in his 50s, the team leader, who had kept to himself until now. His gaze was serious, full of wisdom and authority. Sheath your weapons. Stand back. This girl poses no threat. The officers exchanged glances, hesitant but respectful. Gradually, they sheathed their weapons and took a few steps back. Their movements were slow, marked by a mixture of astonishment and caution. However, Blitz and Shadow remained motionless, still at Alma's side, never taking their eyes off her. The bond seemed palpable, almost sacred. At that moment, a paramedic approached, ready to check on Alma's condition. But the moment he placed his hand on her shoulder, the dogs emitted a low, warning growl, soft but firm. Their posture stiffened, protective. Then, at the touch of Alma's hand placed on their heads, they instantly calmed, flexing their muscles and lowering their heads. Alma, with a discreet smile and a soothing voice, addressed the paramedic and the officers. They don't want you to touch me, but I'm fine, thank you. His gaze, deep and gentle, seemed to say more than his words. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't fear. It was a promise of peace. Around them, the crowd held its breath, aware that they had witnessed a rare moment, where the boundary between the human and the unspeakable seemed to fade. The entire scene was captured, almost by chance, by several passers-by armed with cell phones. The footage clearly showed the moment when the police dogs, trained to obey orders at the drop of a hat, suddenly stopped in front of Alma Bennett, the young high school student in uniform, before sitting down, silent and calm. The emotional silence, Alma's serene demeanor, and the puzzled faces of the police officers created a striking picture. That evening, the video was posted on social media under the evocative title, "Police Dogs Refuse to Attack Black High School Student, Watch Police Reaction." Within hours, the clip went viral. Thousands of views, hundreds of shares, and thousands of comments poured in from all corners of the globe. Among the reactions were messages filled with wonder and mystery. She gives off an energy of peace. We feel her strength without violence. This isn't normal. This girl has a gift. Something we don't understand. Dogs, on the other hand, recognize what humans ignore. They see the soul, not the color. A lesson in humanity, and in calm in this crazy world. In the small town of Greenville, it was a real shock. The local press picked up on the story. Jared Thompson, journalist for the television station WGVL News, launched a special report entitled Alma Bennett, the Girl with the Silent Miracle. In this documentary, Jared recounted Alma's story, the tragic accident, the inexplicable survival, and the surprising scene with the police dogs. He interviewed residents, experts, community members, and even animal behaviorists. Everyone agreed there was something unique about this teenager. Shortly after the incident, Alma was summoned for formal questioning. The officers, still troubled, wanted to understand and clarify. But after listening to her calm and coherent testimony, and in the absence of evidence of wrongdoing, the authorities released her with a formal apology. It was a moment of profound significance for Alma and her family. She had been treated as a suspect, but her dignity remained intact. The following Sunday, in the church's vast hall with its stained-glass windows Holy Grace Chapel, the pastor Isaiah Bennett addressed his assembled congregation, his eyes shining with emotion. My daughter was touched, yes. Not by fear or hatred. By peace. And that peace, neither weapons nor dogs can reach. His voice resonated powerfully, filled with deep faith. The congregation was silent, some wept softly, others nodded, moved by the power of the message. From that day on, Alma became a special figure in Greenville. Thousands of people flocked to the church, not to witness a spectacle, but to understand, to feel the mysterious peace she seemed to carry within her. Some came seeking comfort, others, a glimmer of hope. As for Blitz and Shadow, the two police dogs, their unusual behavior towards Alma did not go unnoticed. They refused to respond to the orders of the other officers. The canine service, not knowing how to handle the situation, decided to remove them from active service. They were sent to a retirement farm for service animals, a quiet place, surrounded by nature, far from noise and hustle and bustle. But one morning several weeks later, to everyone's surprise, Blitz and Shadow burst into the Bennett home. Pastor Isaiah, at first suspicious, recognized a gentle loyalty in their eyes. He then agreed to keep them. Since then, every night, the two German shepherds sleep peacefully at Alma's feet. Faithful, silent guardians, companions of an extraordinary soul. The story didn't make national headlines. Too strange, too witty for the frantic pace of current events. But in Greenville, it left an indelible mark. For those who witnessed that moment, one simple truth was clear. That day, the dogs hadn't seen a threat. They had seen a soul.